mostly in universities, for a short time in a government high school in Chiang Mai, Watanathai Paya High School in Chiang Mai. And both places have given me a lot of things to learn. I've learned a lot from teaching in different situations with different learners, different age groups. And identity is something that I'm really very fond of, because I know how I have evolved myself as a different person, having been in Thai culture for a long time. So this is my topic, but before I uh, continue with my presentation, I would like to tell a little story about my life. When I first came to Thailand, it was my first job overseas. So here I was, a brown-skinned Indian woman, bringing her Indian values, her Indian beliefs, uh, to a Thai classroom full of Thais. They were only Thais. And when I walked into the classroom for the first time, I froze. I really went numb. It was not because of any clash of identities, but I guess it took me some time to understand where I stood in relation to my students. Um, so it took me a couple of months before I came close to them, but once I came midway, I met them midway, and then it was easy to understand and be part of teaching as well as learning. So I am who I am, no matter where I go or where I teach. I think I do carry with myself a part of identity that is Indian. I cannot do away with that. But as a teacher, teaching here for a long time, I have learned to adapt to the Thai culture, so that when I associate with Thais, I speak in that way. And when I speak with my Indians, the Indianness inside me comes out automatically. And when I speak with Westerners, I can speak in a way it is frank, because I know they like being frank and upfront. So I guess it's all right to have multiple identities. Um, so it's very difficult for us to pinpoint what identity is all about. It could be a mix of many different issues. It could be social, it could be the belief system which the students bring with them to the classroom. It could be their own culture. It could be gender too, because I have many students in my class who are Katari, it's a fact that when I first came to start teaching in Thailand, it was difficult for me. But down the line, I have really learned to accept them as very good learners, and I relate to everybody irrespective of what sexual orientation they may have. So I think it is necessary for us as teachers to try to understand our learners. And since this conference is based on the letter E, I think I would say, for me, empathy is something that I really focus on, because if you can empathize with your students, I think it goes a long way in understanding them and helping them with their identity process as well. And I think sometimes we think that when we are teaching Thai students, especially in the Thai context, we just put them into this empty bucket and call them non-native speakers. But I think it's not fair to just label them in terms of a language, because language is just one part of identity. There are so many other factors. And I think if we could understand and appreciate the other factors, there's a plethora of factors that make up a person. If we all could understand this process of how a learner gets identity and appreciate, admire, adapt, and respect those identities, we would be doing a good deal in teaching them how to speak English. When I first came to Thailand, I realized that um, teaching in Thailand still leans towards being teacher-centered. The teacher is more in power than the learners. Like you mentioned, we were discussing in your interesting workshop which we had yesterday. Um, I think this stops them from understanding who they are, from the learners understanding what their identity is. And this also creates this gap between what they are and what they want to be. When they are in the classroom, they are Thais, but when they are learning English, probably they want to be the other. And if the students are allowed to be themselves, then probably the gap will be reduced. And this would enhance language learning. The other big issue now is the students are no more just identities, they have digital identities. So they are somebody on Facebook and somebody on Twitter, somebody on MySpace, a different person on Hi-Fi. And I use a lot of Facebook to interact with the students. It's not just, I don't just use Facebook to upload assignments or give them feedback, but I also try to come close to them by chatting whenever they are online, and I chat just as a friend, not as a teacher, because when it is outside the classroom, it's like a friend-to-friend chat. And in the process of chatting, sometimes it helps to understand their identities and come closer to the teacher as a friend. There are some teachers who may not agree with me. There are many teachers who don't agree with me, even at the university where I teach. They think that too much of Facebook may not be a serious methodology to help the language learning process. But my argument is I'm only using it as a tool, as a medium. I'm not using it as a textbook or a material to help teach the language. So this is something that I found very interesting. He says educators need to pay attention to social networking sites as important for social construction of identity, including personal, social, and learner identities. So there are so many identities that the learner comes along with. So it is a dynamic process. When we change identities, we have different identities. It's not static. We keep changing depending on the situation, depending on the circumstances, depending on the people we interact. I think identity is always evolving. So it's good to make the learners aware of the fact that identities can change and identities need not be static. This is another area I'm interested in. Sometimes I feel textbooks are very specifically culturally oriented. It would be good if textbooks and materials show different cultures so that these learners can identify themselves with different cultures and not one specific culture. It would also help them again to accept identities and help to learn the language as well. We are going from a micro level to a macro level. The whole world is globalizing in a big way, and there's nothing as, I think Dr. Rajiv Ramnath spoke yesterday about English as a lingua franca. It's ELF, and it's gone from the days of ESL and EFL. And with English being used for everything around the world, I think we should also try to come closer to the students and understand that each of us is different, and it's okay to be different. We need not be this one person, one learner. Differences are okay. When I started learning English in India, we really studied, when we talked about festivals, we talked about Diwali, we talked about Holi, and I think it kind of helped us to learn the language, because when we studied, we brought that schemata with us to the classroom. So our ideas were already there. It was just that we had to understand it in terms of another language, which I think was easier as language learner. But if students are trying to learn about different topics and they are also struggling with the L2, then it becomes difficult. And because of this, they start losing their self-esteem and confidence. And in the process, they also do not come out with their own identities. So it's all really interlinked. Last week, I asked one of my students, "You're so good with your English. Why don't you just go when you go outside, outside the classroom, just for 10 minutes every day, use only English with your friends. You all know English. They are English major students." So he looked at me and said, "I dare not speak with my friends in English. They think I'm trying to show off and they look at me in a strange way." So it was like an identity clash going there. He thought that if he spoke English, they would think that he was being too westernized. And in his thinking, that would lead to maybe condemning his own culture, which probably he didn't want to do. But I said, "That's fine, you go ahead, it's not like that." On the other hand, there was a girl who said that when she goes shopping, when she goes to pub, when she goes to bar, she speaks in English. And she said, "Oh, Ajansudha, it's so good because my friends around me don't know what I'm talking about. I don't care." So I had these two different opinions. I don't know whether it was based on a gender, because the first one was a boy and the second one was a girl. So kudos to women. It's all right to have multiple identities. So I think I would like to say that we have to encourage our learners to understand that we are human beings. It's okay to have multiple identities. You could be Thai, you could sound like an American, you could maybe talk like an Indian. It's okay to have multiple identities. And lastly, I would like to end by saying it's all about connecting the dots. Life is full of challenges for us. We are always growing, we are always evolving. She had a wonderful workshop yesterday and I really enjoyed it, and she asked us all to write on a piece of paper what identity meant in our own terms. The first thing that came to my mind, I was sitting with another teacher from Boston. The first thing that came to my mind was that, first of all, I'm a woman. That it starts there, my identity, and then it grows along the time. And I would like to end by saying that it's been a wonderful experience, sharing my ideas with you. And thank you all for coming to listen to me at this unearthly hour, maybe you all are hungry, maybe you all are sleepy, and I really appreciate your presence here. Thank you very much. Any questions?
So what is the makeup of your classrooms mostly right now? You say you teach at the university level.
Yeah.
As far as the identities, what kinds of identities do you have represented in your classroom?
Actually, it's an interesting question because I have seen that depending on what major they are, they have different identities. Now, I teach English majors. They are a little more upfront and little more, they have more confidence within themselves than the students who are just learning English because they have to learn it. On the other hand, there's another group that is, I teach a group called English for International Communication. They are a group of students who travel abroad. They do a lot of work and travel from the university. They get some bit of scholarships too, the good ones. So their motivation is also at a different level. So I guess identity has also to do a little bit with motivation, with the kind of majors that we are studying.
remarks from the students, it just reminded me of the research that inspired mine, research one in Norton. She was also getting the same kind of answers from the students. They don't use it because of what other people think of them. They kind of look down on for using English in a situation where they shouldn't be, something like that. It's really, really interesting about what kind of identity they bring from outside the classroom, into the classroom, and how it all changes once they get into the classroom.
I mean, it's interesting because I've never really taught ESL, like the thing that happens here is mostly EFL, right? But I don't know what kind of experience it would be as a teacher to be teaching ESL, like in the States, or when you have a group of
It would be very
different
similar to